everyone. Welcome to another edition of Bunker Labs Office Hours, a weekly live show brought to you by Team at Bunker, a national network of veteran entrepreneurs and military spouses dedicated to growing our ecosystem. I'm your host, the one and only Iron Mike Steadman, coming to you today not from Newark, but from the beautiful city of New York and Harlem, joined by my co-host today, Amy, and our guest today, Ariel, to talk about ecosystem development here at the Bunker. So we got an exciting show for you all today. I know it's been a few weeks since we've been going live, but like you, we've been working hard behind the scenes, and I'm excited to catch up with all of you. So before I chop it up with Ariel, let me go ahead and pass it over to Amy to share any updates that are taking place in the Bunker.
Thanks, Mike. So we got a couple things. So most of our applications have closed for all of our programs, so we're in a little bit of a lull period. But we do have an event coming up in Washington, D.C. on October 9th. It's the USAA Pitch Competition powered by Bunker Labs. So you can join us live if you're in the D.C. area or want to travel. The 7 contestants will compete for a top prize of $50,000, and then second place is 25, and I think third place is 10. But anyway, so I will post that link in the chat. And then the other thing we've got is it's still Hispanic Heritage Month, I believe.
It is.
Yes, okay. Like I think it's still there. It's like one of those weird ones. It's the 15th through the 15th, so it's an off month. So we have a post on the blog celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and we got a little feature from Jessica Van Dop de Jesus, who is one of our facilitators for breaking barriers in entrepreneurship, and just an amazing member of the community, and also was on the Transition podcast with Mike. So we've got a little thing on the blog for her, and that is all I got this week.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. And a special shout out to the 82 new veterans and military spouses that recently joined the CL Circle cohort. That's amazing. And that really ties into our topic today of why ecosystem development is so important. So, Ariel, please go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers today. Talk a little bit about your background and what you're excited about most here at the Bunker.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an honor working for Bunker Labs for the last 3 months. Prior to my time here at Bunker Labs, I have had a couple of different career paths. I was a teacher here in the south side of Chicago to a high school, Chicago Vocational Career Academy. I was an algebra teacher to freshmen. After that, I did some economic development work with the University of Notre Dame, bringing our MBA candidates from the Mendoza College of Business to the South Bend area to help teach younger high schoolers how to build business plans. After that, I went to grad school at Georgetown, where I got my degree in corporate communications and public relations with a focus in social impact. After that, I did some internal communications work for some Fortune 500. So that really focused on employee engagement, corporate culture, management communications, all that great stuff for Fortune 500's internal communications for their employees. After that, I moved over to that external communications work, where I worked at GMMB in DC, where we focused on social impact initiatives. And I specifically was in the education initiatives, working with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Bloomberg Philanthropies, and other organizations that focus on education initiatives. After that, I moved back to Chicago with my husband and my dog and my daughter, where I worked with Dairy Management Inc. and I was helping with the communications programming for the Fuel Up to Play 60 program that we partnered with the NFL with, as well as helped start the project management department, first one ever for the organization there. What brought me to Bunker is just my absolute love for the work that we do. My majority of my siblings have either served or are currently serving, and the family members that are not in the military, they are actually entrepreneurs. So it's a great marrying of my passions being here. So what I'm most excited about at Bunker is really spreading the word and bringing in organizations that can create real value for our community and our program participants, so that we can create this ecosystem of knowledge, thought leadership, mentorship, and just collaboration, because I think it's really important to bring all of that to light, not even just for our communities, but for the communities that we partner with.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to do real quick is shout out to all you tuning in. We got my man from Vegas. Shout out to Edgar. Edgar is a big part of that community out there. When you talk about ecosystem development,
Yep.
I feel like the community out in Las Vegas is like a case study on how to do it. So shout out
Great
to Edgar.
ambassador. Yes.
Yeah, shout out to Daryl as well. So if you're tuning in, just go ahead and drop in the chat where you're tuning in today from. Now, Ariel, there's something I'll tell you is when I was transitioning out of the military, I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, let alone this veteran entrepreneurial ecosystem. And the way I see it, we have really two fronts. Okay, we have those transitioning veterans that are getting out of the military and they're looking for their tribe. Okay, then we also have those that are already out. They might have been out for a few years or whatever, and they're just kind of wondering, and we've got to attract like both of them and bring them together to let them know, hey, the bunker and what we're building is for everyone.
Absolutely. And a lot of our partners are in one of those two realms. We have some partners that have programming that is very focused on their veteran and military family spouses, and they have specific programming for transitioning services or ingrained work that they have already done with the veteran community in their city. But we also have partners that don't have those programs, but they have the expertise and the thought leadership and the resources that they want to provide those families and provide those veteran entrepreneurs. So it's a great mix on helping those that are in both of those realms.
One thing I've also talked about was, having gone through the entrepreneurial journey from zero to hero, not necessarily a hero yet, but I have validated quite a few business models enough to get into blocking and tackling. And there are things that, regardless of where you're coming from, I feel like there are certain partners that I would love for us to start connecting with more.
Right.
Thankfully, we've got Intuit. I had a chance to produce the crash course of small business finance. But let's be honest, a lot of micro business owners, a lot of first time founders, they're going to be using QuickBooks, right? So that makes
Hmm.
perfect sense. Okay. When you think about where they're building their websites, right? They're using Squarespace, they're using Wix, they're using all these different things. So when I think about our potential, not necessarily corporate partners that we want to bring into the ecosystem, but just these tools that a lot of our community are already using, I would love to start building more relationships with those kind of entities. Just curious to know how you think about ecosystem development here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we talk about ecosystems, we're really talking about those organizations that can focus on helping us advance entrepreneurship through education, connections, advocacy. So, a lot of our programs, whether it's resources to their pool of applicants that we can bring into our programming and our application process, or it's expertise that they can bring in as a masterclass for one in our curriculum. We also work with a couple of different partners that will be providing certain discounts on services. So an example is Tranial. They're offering a heavily discounted rate on utilizing their services. And that's going to be a big focus for us going into Q1 of next year, making sure that we are providing these opportunities and these resources that are tangible in that way. But, when we're talking about partnerships, we're looking at those tangible credits and discounts, but we're also talking about those mentorship, thought leadership master classes where people are absorbing that expertise that could be really beneficial and impactful at any stage of where they're at with their entrepreneurship career.
As you've been connecting with a lot of these potential partners, what has been some of their feedback thus far, or reservations regarding getting involved in the ecosystem?
Yeah, well, what they've been really excited about is just utilizing our local ecosystems. We're doing a lot of local activations with some of our partners right now. So, a lot of our partners are looking for veterans to sit on a panel to talk about their work and Bunker and how Bunker has helped them move from A to B and how they can utilize those lessons learned to help others in their communities. So, that is something that a lot of our partners have been very interested in. We are working with about four plus partners on different panels in their local communities. We're bringing in people like the Launchpad Venture Group in Boston to come and speak to our Boston cohort huddles to talk about what they can do, potential like ways that they can work together. We have so many options and so many ways that people are working together, and it's really great to see. But what they're most excited about is sharing that expertise and sharing those resources and sharing our resources with their community I mean, some reservations is just how do we continue that engagement to make sure that it's not transactional and it's not just our logo on their website and your logo on our website. How do we make that partnership engaging and how do we make sure that it's valuable? And these smaller local activations are really solving that.
Do you get the sense that people realize the opportunity from an economic perspective that veteran entrepreneurs and military spouses present? Because if you're in the know, you know, like a lot of us move around this ecosystem, et cetera. But sometimes I get the impression that a lot of industries don't realize there's so much untapped potential amongst our community.
Absolutely. And I think that's really I think yes, I think people definitely recognize the wealth of knowledge and purpose that comes from our veteran entrepreneurs and military spouses economically, but I think there's still a bigger story we can tell by utilizing our partners, making sure that we're getting our veteran military spouse entrepreneurs out there more, speaking more on these panels. I think there is definitely acknowledgement and appreciation and aspirations and inspiration coming from that. But I think there's more we can definitely still be doing.
You know, one thing I got to get back to on the transition podcast is
Mhm.
ecosystem mapping. So I did a
Yeah.
lot of ecosystem mapping early on this year. And I need to continue with that because I still haven't been able to get with the Mill Vet. You know, and the Mill Vet puts on an amazing military veteran startup conference every year in February. And I've been a part of it, you know, since the first one. And it is just an amazing event. You have the VFL, Veteran Futures Lab. Shout out to Alexa Madero, former Bunker Labs ambassador, veterans and residents, alumni, you know, and so we've got all these different groups that are essentially supporting the same community. But a lot of times on the outside looking in, it can feel overwhelming, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Bunker represents kind of like the gold standard because we just got, you know, we're all over the country and really all over the world at this point. And
Hmm.
so, you know, I really think we can do a good job of kind of bringing everyone together and helping them navigate this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I loved the most about America's Business Mission. A lot of our non funding partners, they sign on to be partners with the America's Business Mission because they are devoting that space that they're bringing to us and donating to us to serving military families and veteran entrepreneurs and dedicating that service to and being a part of that mission, being a part of that movement. So I think it's definitely happening.
So I want to go to our chat now. If you all have any questions for Ariel or myself about ecosystem development, what you're seeing work in your local communities, please go ahead and feel free to drop that in the chat. You know, one thing, Ariel, too, is that, you know, when you live in a major metropolitan area, like I just got back from DC, it's amazing, right? You know, New
Mhm.
York City, it's amazing. And I wonder what the ecosystems are looking like for our community members that are not in those necessarily metropolitan areas. And a lot of times, some of them have to stand it up from scratch.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where that grassroots ecosystem building really comes. You have to go into your networks. You have to be really diligent about your outreach and what the communications coming from you is and what your elevator pitch to make sure that they understand this is why we're doing that. This is what we're looking for. This is what you get out of being our partner. And it's just cultivating those relationships and making sure we're fostering them so that they're lifelong. And I think a lot of our cities, whether they're major or whether they're on a smaller scale, are doing a really incredible job with that from what I've seen so far. And I'm really excited to help build that even further with them. But a lot of our ambassadors are doing so much of that work and so well that it's really inspiring to see.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I want to talk about our ambassadors for a sec because I've
Yeah.
also always felt ambassadors essentially represent the gold standards of what it
Yeah.
means to be part of this ecosystem, right? They're out there shaking hands and kissing babies, they're putting on
Mhm.
events, but they're also working to grow their own businesses. And so, one of the things
Absolutely.
I've been really bullish about is how do we make sure the ambassadors are getting the resources and things that they need to grow? Because we've all been there, right? You're given so much, right? And then at a certain point, right, you feel like you don't have much to give because you're not actually generating enough margin in your own business. So, you know,
Yeah.
you start to get anxiety about the time commitments and everything else. And so
Absolutely.
I would love to see more of our ambassadors not just survive, but thriving.
Of course. And that's a big piece of bringing in these partners to our huddles and our showcases and our connects to provide that expertise, that subject matter experts, that mentorship to help build up our ambassadors as they are helping build up their cohorts. So we're really working hard on that.
And I want to give a shout out to Xavier and the ambassador teams because, we've got the ambassador flying coming up here in San Antonio. San Antonio has been a great ecosystem for the veteran entrepreneur and military spouse community. You got Warrior Rising that's done quite a few events down there. I believe Black Rifle Coffee opened up a shop down there. So there's a lot of energy. And we're going to be flying in, I think, at the end of next month for the ambassador fly-in. And
Yep.
Xavier and his team have done a great job of providing programming for the ambassadors while they're there. So I think that's a great step in the right direction in terms of, making the ambassadors feel like, hey, we know you all are running your own businesses and have your own dreams and aspirations. And, we're here to support.
Xavier and our team has been working so incredibly hard to make sure that we're providing sessions, workshops that are going to be undeniably valuable to our ambassadors partaking in our fly-in next month.
So before we transition to book recommendations, I just want to give one more chance. If you got any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat for us. And Ariel, is it Ariel or Ariel?
Ariel, but it's okay.
Ariel, from this ecosystem development standpoint, what do you think is the biggest growth opportunity we have?
I really do think coming from a communications person through and through, it's really getting our name out there and making sure people know that we're here. This is what we're doing. We're changing lives. We have people that believe in us. So believe in us, because I think that the more manpower and the more partners that we have, the more we can say what we're doing is working, what people believe in what we're doing. So this is why you should believe in us and join the movement, join us, because we're doing a lot of incredible things. We have amazing entrepreneurs. We have countless organizations and businesses that fall under that Bunker Labs umbrella that are changing the world and changing the lives of veteran military spouses and more. So I think it's really important to just keep getting what we're doing out there, because I think we'll become a household brand.
Absolutely. And, part of this show is a big part of that, building that awareness, as well as the Transition podcast, capturing those stories, providing some teaching, to help
Yeah.
people that are out there in the fights, in the trenches. I call that blocking and tackling. We're in
Yeah.
the day to day. It's not as pretty, but you all do have support through the content that we push out. So let's go ahead and transition.
The stories are so important to share. Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and transition to our book/podcast recommendation. So I believe you came in today with a podcast. What is it?
I did. So it is called The Ecosystems for Change. It's coming out of social venturers, and this was brought to light to me by one of our partners, the Global Entrepreneurship Network, and it's just been incredibly eye-opening to hear how they talk about bigger ecosystems, like we're talking about bigger cities, and also those smaller ones. Just it hits a whole bunch of topics that I think are incredibly impactful. Social capital, when you feel like quitting, like what are some of those exercises you can do to like talk through and change your mindset to help go to that next step when it feels like it's impossible, how to tell your stories, which I think as a communications person is the most crucial thing that you could be doing. So it's a lot of great content on there.
Absolutely. Shout out to my man, Jake Tozier. So Jake was part of ecosystem here at Bunker for the longest time. He's got some advice. He says, be present. Don't be afraid to be the new face in some old establishments, whether it's the, VFW or some of these legacy organizations, because that is a great way to start. And we're going to go ahead and include a link to that podcast too. So for those of you that are in these spaces, I can't express how important it is for you to get out and shake hands, I know it's post-COVID, so we can shake hands again, but there's something about events and building ecosystems, right? And even when you start, like when I think about Newark, right? I don't have the bandwidth to host a weekly or monthly kind of event, But those I know are a great way to build community, and get some buzz going.
Absolutely. That is a
My
great comment. Being present and showing up is so important.
yeah. And my book recommendation this week is Founding Sales by Pete. I forget his name, Pete Kajenzia, but the early stage go to market handbook. And here's why, right? There's 5 stages of small business growth or startup growth, right? It's validate, sales, foundation, expansion, and multiply, right? Most of us, I'm not say us, right? But a lot of people do not make it outside of the validation phase within the ecosystem for the first time. And mainly is because they don't spend enough time on the sales process, right? Marketing is great, but marketing's sole purpose is to prep the battlefield to close sales. And you need both, right? You need some marketing activity going on that allows you to kick up dirt, build awareness, but you also got to do the hand to hand, one-on-ones to close deals. And what I like about this book is it cuts through the fluff of what it takes to drive recurring revenue, right? Getting out there, what kind of materials do you need to have? As you start to scale up, how do you move yourself as a sole revenue generator? And this is one of those books that, regardless of what stage you're in, through that 5 stages I talked about, it lays out, how to expand to that next phase. And so I think it's a great resource for a lot of you. I actually just sent it to one of my coaching clients. He owns a business, but he's doing 80-90% of the sales. And so as he starts to train his sales team, what resources does he need to have to facilitate that transition? And I'm just kind of going back through it myself as I continue to make my lead list, because one thing, Ariel, is like, you got to drive business, right? Got to close deals. But a lot of times people exhaust their list, right, of their own community, and they're not doing enough to bring new people in. And so again, it's a great resource for you all out there. And maybe I'll get him on the Transition podcast to kind of talk about it. So I'll reach out to him on Twitter. But good book. Let me know what you think about it. And before we wrap up, I'm going to pass it back to you. Any closing remarks or advice you'd like to leave our listeners with as they work on building out their own ecosystems and what they can have looking forward to here at the bunker?
Yeah, as I do so on the national level, I think the best piece of advice I could say is the worst thing someone can say is no. Always reach out, always research people in your community that you are interested in partnering with. Oh, reach out to whoever you want, whenever you want, because the worst case scenario is they say no. The best case scenario is they become a part of your ecosystem and they change the entire scope of your cohort and the work that you're doing in your city. So never be afraid to reach out, never be afraid to see who can be a great partner in your local ecosystem, because there's all they can do is say no, or they can be a huge partner that changes your world. So
Well, we're
always reach out.
Well, we're excited to have you here. We're excited to work with you as we continue to build this amazing ecosystem out. And it's been a great episode because, again, this stuff is important. We know y'all are out there in the trenches, and we're trying to put more support and resources. With that being said, if there's a topic you all would like us to cover, whether it's on office hours or the transition, do me a favor and go ahead and just drop me a message on LinkedIn. You can just find me in the chat, Iron Mike Steadman, and drop me a line, because one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing moving forward is, getting that feedback loop going a little bit more with the content that we're creating. So, we come up with ideas here internally, but we want to hear from you. What are the challenges you're facing, and how can we solve that specifically on the podcast to point you in the right direction? And so just feel free, again, reach out to me directly, and make sure you're subscribed to the Transition Podcast if you haven't done so already. We have some great sponsors for that show. Special shout out to the MetLife Foundation for continually supporting us and making this platform accessible to all. But we want to make sure that you all are taking advantage of it and it's providing maximum value. So feel free to reach out to me and drop those questions. Until next time, everyone, peace, love. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you all for having me.